when it comes to enterprise automation. And as I said again at the start, it's automation itself is not a new thing. If you recollect, and you would recollect very well, that 8 to 10 years back, there was so much hype around RPAs,
Yep.
right? And then we moved on, and there was emergence of low code, no code platforms, and now we have this whole AI based automation platforms, right? So do you, I think there is something to clarify here for our listeners as well, because it's not always clear whether RPA still continues to play a role in today's automation landscape. Is it dead, or is it, we are building on top of it? And the other thing, I think there is not enough clarity within most of the listeners when it comes to low code and no code platforms. Typically, you would see these terms used together, hand in hand, low code, no code platform. So it will be good to clarify what is some difference between what is a low code versus what is a no code platform.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, to start with your first point, I mean, I don't believe RPA is dead. I think, though, to your point, it has been around for quite a while, and what would maybe class as low-hanging fruit has already been picked. But I think it's maybe getting another lease of life, potentially because a lot of the innovations that are happening in the AI space really critically rely on data, which is often locked into legacy systems, and RPA is still a perfectly valid mechanism for getting that data out of those systems. And it may not have had that level of importance in the past. So, I think there may be a bit of a reinvigoration of RPA's role in that sense. In terms of low code, no code, you're right. People tend to say it in one breath, and it's just like one thing. What I have observed over my last decade in that industry is there is a huge amount of diversity still across the range of capabilities and the sort of focus areas within what is broadly called low code, no code. There are very niche products. There are products that come often, say, from a BPM background that are now low code, no code products. There are products that come from, say, a domain centered background like CRM or ITSM, which have now evolved into low code, no code. And then there are sort of more pure play, which is where OutSystems, where I work, comes from, which is designed from scratch to be that kind of platform. And the sort of things that you build on them are quite variable. So again, it's really getting back to the typical problem of, you've got to use the right tool for the right job. For instance, our platform is much more enterprise grade. You wouldn't use it to build your own personal website and e-commerce. But like on the other hand, you could use it to build a core system, which our customers do, and you would use some of the lower end low code, no code platforms for that. It's about using the right tool for the right job, I think, and looking seriously at what the differences are.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And I think a couple of points you implicitly mentioned there, which I want to elevate a bit. You said RPA, what RPA requires was data, and that is not going away, the need for accurate data. And I think when it comes to process automation, the need for a very well-defined processes, right, itself is important prerequisite. So even if you have an AI-based automation platforms, nothing is silver bullet, as we all know in technology landscape. The foundations about having a good data landscape and good enterprise process repository, etc. Those are fundamental requirements or building blocks on which these platforms, automation platforms, will really excel.
Absolutely. And I think, but it is getting a little bit more complex as well, because you're still dealing with, say, especially in the RPA space and in the general integration space, structured data. What's really making that a lot more complex with AI is you now need to bring in the unstructured data and merge that to produce something useful as well. And that's where there's that additional level of complexity and governance that's required, right?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And we'll come to the governance point. But I just want to touch base a little bit about on technology front on AI agents, because no
Mm,
discussion happens nowadays without AI agents when it comes to AI.
nice.
Do you do you see it is still a bit early days when we talk about rolling out AI agents for automation or any enterprise use cases? Or it is there in terms of maturity that we organizations can start thinking of rolling out agents.
So I have seen organizations roll out successful production agentic AI solutions, but I would say that the ones that have done so are in a still very small minority.
Yes,
What
yes,
that says to me is, at least in some use cases and domains, it absolutely is technically possible. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to do it at all. But the fact that the majority of organizations are nowhere near that clearly says that, you know, there are challenges which are not broadly being addressed. And my impression is there are definitely technical challenges. So not every use case is easy or viable for AI. So, you know, you do need to pick your targets quite well. Regulatory mandates also vary from industry to industry, and they can also put a brake on innovation. I mentioned already, but I stressed it again. Culture again is a big one.
mm,
You know, having the culture within an organization, it is definitely quite threatening to a lot of people as well. AI, it's still quite new to a lot of people, even if they're not threatened by it. So, you know, getting that level of understanding, all of those are barriers. And, you know, I did mention it again before, but you know, governance is still being established in a lot of organizations. And I believe that's also one of the keys to unlocking value safely around AI. And those foundations simply aren't there in many cases as well. And then, as I mentioned earlier, with the ROI, the economics may not be there either. That, you know, you place something that's a human task with an agentic one, and it might work technically, but it may not work economically.
yeah, yeah.
A lot
No,
of barriers.